Hey everybody, it's Betsy from Story Drawing Skills. As you may know, I saw this video by Super Death Show called You Should Make a Webcomic, and it really convinced me that I needed to make a webcomic. To be more specific, a 100-panel webcomic made from scratch in 6 months, which was back in 2017. So obviously that was a fail, but we're going to turn that failure around into a progressing victory. So I will keep making this webcomic, maybe not in 6 months, but how about while I'm going back to school and working, and maybe it'll get done by the end of the year. Let's go for that. So here we are, back again after so long, but happy to be back. Unfortunately, in this absence, once again, I learned a hard lesson about file organization because I accidentally threw away a whole bunch of footage on some panels that appear before this page, but now they are just lost to the digital recycle bin. So you move on, you keep going forward. So this is at the end of the flashback, and then there was all my lost footage. So now we're going to jump over here to a panel I was working on where Socorro sends Kes and Clarice flinging backward to clear the way for her plan, and did not give them any forewarning. Had a lot of trouble with Socorro's pose, number one, because I had never done any costume studies in action. So here's another lesson for you comic makers out there. When you design your costumes and you give somebody shoulder armor, be sure you can figure out the range of motion. Like, can she put her arms up and backward? Like, how does her shoulder armor allow her to move in that way? Does it just sit on top? Who knows, man, because I didn't do that bit of research, that bit of homework, and so now it was really giving me a lot of trouble when I had to try to draw her in that position. So if you're making a webcomic that has some action in it, make sure that your characters can actually do those actions. Actually, yeah. Lots of rocks. I'm surprised I didn't get better at drawing rocks with all the rocks that I had to draw. But that, again, proves another point, that simply repeating the things that you know doesn't necessarily make you better. That if I draw rocks, quote unquote wrong over and over, they're never going to get any better. So, yeah, you gotta analyze, improve in other ways. But that wasn't the point of this comic. And in fact, it wasn't the point of this episode. I think I was going to start talking about quitting. What to do when people around you are telling you to quit. So that was a conversation that I had, I think, at the beginning of the year. It was right at the beginning of the school year. I was starting college again, and just talking about, what am I going to do with my webcomic? When am I going to be able to finish it? The two people that I talked to it about were both like, well, why don't you just quit? Because you've already learned a bunch of stuff about making webcomics. You don't really have any strong attachment to these characters or this story, so why bother finishing it? Why not just quit while you're ahead at only 50% done, instead of working until, 75% done and then making the same decision to quit. And I had to dig deep and really decide, was this project about completion, which I always said it was, that my only goal for this project was to complete it. Like, that's it, the end. I could finish it all with, just really fast doodles and scribbly art and, not really care about the quality of the comic as long as it's finished. So I feel like if I stop now and try to just take what I've learned so far, that's not the same as actually finishing an entire project or comic. And I'm not going to be able to learn anything about finishing a comic unless I actually finish a comic, right? So that is what I'm hanging on to, that really, really specific goal, and that helps to make a lot of decisions when I am in a time crunch, or I'm having problems with the story flow, which I had a lot of problems in this section, just because it was actiony, but I'm very sensitive to the amount of time that is passing from panel to panel. So just this time frame between this big rock monster raising his arms and then smashing down on where these girls were standing, how long does that take? I mean, yeah, he's a big old giant, so maybe he moves more slowly, but I mean, what, 5 seconds, 10 seconds? I mean, that seems like a long 10 seconds to bring those arms down. And I had in my storyboards, or my my story beat sketches, a lot of dialogue being exchanged, a lot of panels, a lot of things happening, and it just felt like it was taking them maybe 2 or 3 minutes to do what they were doing in the time span of this rock monster just bringing down his arms. And it's just, I can't stand that. It feels weird. So that I found out was one of my things that I can't let go of. Like sometimes I admit when I'm kind of taking shortcuts on the art, or when I'm taking shortcuts on speech balloons, dialogue, whatever. But something that seems to be ingrained into my personal workflow is that if the timing feels weird, or if it's unclear about what's happening, it really bothers me, and I go back and I change it and change it and change it and change it until like I have have it all worked out that if I do a set number of panels per week, then I'll be done by the time summer vacation is over. Well, will that really happen? We don't know. But it helps me to know that, look, I can get these panels just done maybe 80% the way that I wanted them to be, make some sacrifices here and there and stay on track, or I can still fiddle with this until I'm 100% complete, and it might be next year. Those are the two choices that I have, and that makes it easier to just kind of weigh if the problem I'm having is really worth the amount of time it needs for the solution. So I don't know if that's a tip that's helpful or not, but if you have those really clear goals in your mind about why you're doing this, then it'll be easier to kind of figure out, oh, there's where I'm changing things around because the timing was off. It'll be easier to figure out what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do in the completion of your project, which is most helpful, since this project got really just changed, evolved, turned into something that I hadn't planned for in the beginning. So that's probably going to happen with all of your webcomics and all of your projects. So just be aware. Things are going to change. Things are not going to go according to plan. So you need a really, really specific set of things that you are willing to compromise on, or you're not. And that should help you as you're continuing the art and continuing to find all of these problems that you run into and try to find solutions and try to work it out. Kind of keep you on track and focused on what you're really trying to do. So for me, what I'm really trying to do is just finish this sucker. And, I make some effort to make sure that the art is somewhat consistent, or, at least that you can make sense of what's happening. But like for a while there, I was getting crazy obsessed with like making sure all the rocks were the same color and that the lighting was consistent. And, these things that I think in my heart that people will find out if I cheated on the colors or the light. And really I have to step back and think, as a reader, when I'm reading other people's comics, that never crosses my mind. I never go like, what? That lighting wasn't like that in the previous panel. So I've been trying to kind of relax on those fiddly little details of, are those the exact rock sizes they were 5 panels ago? And it's probably been so long since you've read the previous part that you won't even know if those rocks are the same size or not. And again, if it's not real important to the story, sometimes we make these invisible rules for ourselves, and there's no need to do that, like, whatsoever. So here I'm finally moving on to panels, I think 50, 55 or so. I actually went back through the entire script and not renumbered, but did another count to just make sure that my panels were on track, and I found out no, I was actually maybe 8 panels short of what I originally thought, because originally I was like on these open panels, I was counting each object as like a panel, and I'm like, no, because if it were enclosed in a panel, this would all be one. So I've been changing a little bit of the panel count, which, like I say, sent me back a little bit. So by the end of this video, I think I'm at panel 60 again, which isn't bad. 60% done, you know, now only 40% to go. Downhill run, right? Should be easier from this point on. But anyway, I went through the entire script and I thumbnailed everything to try to make it a little easier to spot these timing issues and just get the flow of the whole story. And funny enough, it's still changing even as I do this video, but I think changing for the better, and not changing so much that I would have to start the whole thing over, because that would be ridiculous. Here's a part where I was realizing I'm getting too paranoid with colors, when I got a dust cloud image off the internet, and I think it was from like years ago in like Australia or I don't know, someplace, and it was just really orange colored dust in the middle of the day, bright sunlight. So there's all these really warm colors, all these oranges that I was just like color picking because, you know, I wanted it to be accurate. And then when I got it down into my comic, I realized it didn't match the emotional tone that I was going for, like at all. Like I wanted this to be a down moment, a dreary moment, a moment of, oh my gosh, is she dead? Was she smooshed? And, you know, bright orange colors don't really carry that emotional tone of, was that person smooshed? So I changed it all to these dark grays, dark purples, and tried to use this really long panel as kind of a transition from that kind of lighter sky color down into some darker purples and such when they see that Socorro's clothing is all caught up in those smashed rocks. I also found out that it's very difficult to draw the crack sort of texture of the rock there, so I now have a newfound respect for the effects artists who add this stuff to our comics and our movies and such, and make it feel more dramatic with the damage to the things around it. I think I need to read some shonen comics or something where they're always, you know, damaging something. So here's a look at the panels that I lost the footage on. These are all up on Tapas now, that you can read the whole thing. There's a link at the bottom of this video if you want to go check it out. And yeah, I think this is ending up on panel 59 or so. I think 59. So now I have panel 60 on my next batch of panels, and hopefully we'll continue this on, and maybe, hopefully, sort of, maybe, wish hard that I'll be done by the end of summer break, which I think is August 31st, 2020. Until next time, guys, have a good one.